Okay, welcome everyone to this expert AMA with Backendless. And we've got Mark, the founder of Backendless, with us. So it's really exciting to have him and basically be hearing more about the tool at today's session. The format for today is as follows. So it's super simple, and most of you know the drill already, but great. Mark will tell us a little bit more about Backendless, the origin story, where it came from, and also his background. And then we'll move into a demo, so we'll be able to get under the hood of the tool and see it live. And then we sort of maybe tease out how people can get started in the tool, and then we'll open up for questions that any of you have. So really simple, and we should be sort of done around the hour mark. But yeah, I will pass over to Mark to kick things off. But thanks so much for being here, and really looking forward to hearing more about Backendless.
Thank you, Max. Let me share my screen so you guys can see. I'm just going to share my desktop. All right, let me know if you can see it okay. There's going to be just a very quick slide deck, and then we'll just jump right into the demo. So first of all, thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to talk about what we do, especially with people who may find it relevant to what you guys are doing. I'm going to jump right in and just give you a little bit of background myself. So I'm founder of Backendless. The company was started in 2012. It was sort of a pivot, as you will see in the second. My background is software engineering. So I've been focusing primarily in the past life and even now in highly distributed, high-load enterprise systems. Even though a lot of applications with Backendless are consumer-facing, the sheer volume of APIs and just the traffic that we're dealing with really qualifies it as an enterprise application. Some of my past experiences include both very large and small startups. And as far as the large companies with the names that you might recognize, my very first experience was with American Airlines, specifically Sabre, which is the traveler reservation system of American. And Backendless is my third startup. All of them were bootstrapped. I never raised any money intentionally because that's how I like it. Just gives the maximum freedom to innovate and move independently. My passion is in innovation. I think that's going to be the number one thing that I would value the most, is just being able to innovate, to come up with the most elegant solutions that solve problems in perhaps the simplest possible way. So a little bit of background of where I just got started, right? So I came to America. Well, I'm not in the States right now. I'm visiting my development team, but I came to the US in 1994. And the very first job was just at Wendy's, and which is kind of funny because I was literally in the country for about a month, and I met someone. It's like, hey, do you have a job? No, I don't. So let's just find something for you. So I come to an interview at Wendy's, and I'm not sure if you guys are where you have Wendy's where you are, but it's just really just a fast food chain. And I talked to the manager, and it's like, wow, your English is perfect. I'm literally in the country for 1 month. It's like, you're going to be operating a register. Like, seriously? And she's like, look, we have a bunch of guys from Mexico and we have a bunch of Russians, and nobody really can speak any proper English, but yours is like way better. So they put me on the register. But anyway, I stayed there for about 3 months, and then I found a job at American Airlines where I became a software engineer because I had being 19, I had about a resume of about like 5 pages long where I put in everything I heard of in there. And that back in 1994, it wasn't that hard to find a job as a software engineer. But anyway, it took about 10 years where I was just moving from small to large companies, kind of gathering experience. And in 2003, I kind of officially started my startup life. And the very first company that I started was called Midnight Coders. And the way Midnight Coders started, it was really just a New Year's resolution. On 2003, January 1st, I made a New Year's resolution where I said I'm going to work a few hours every day just building something cool. Took about 6 months to come up with the product. I needed to name the company, and since I was working mostly at night, since I had a full-time job, I named it Midnight Coders. I made it plural just to make myself look bigger than I was at that time, and that was my very first startup. And put together a website. This is a screenshot from Web Archive of what that website looked at back then. So I kind of had to learn how to do all the HTML stuff and so on. But the company did quite well. So in about 3-4 years, I hit $1 million revenue, with no outside funding, just kind of working my butt off. And the company was growing, we're hiring people. So it was a fantastic kind of a initial experience of living the startup life. But anyway, in 2012, and we were kind of evolving, in 2012, there was a pivot time where we had a product that was just an integration server that could connect different types of client-side technologies with different types of backends. So you could have JavaScript communicating with Java and .NET, or Silverlight, which I think of the past right now, but it could communicate with Java and .NET and so on. So it was like this multiple languages to multiple languages client side to the server side. That was the product. And then in 2012, there was an idea let's just put it in the cloud, make it a service. And that's how Backendless was born. So that the Backendless was born with the idea that we provide a server that has a bunch of services that provide the backend infrastructure and operations. So whenever you build an application, you just don't need to worry about the backend. And that's kind of the idea about Backendless. So the true meaning is that you just don't worry about the backend, not that backend is just not there. But anyway, the longer term vision was to create a system or a platform where one could build an application without worrying about the backend, without worrying about all the nitty-gritty details, and really without worrying about the coding. Because with the vision that I have and what we're exercising now, with the whole no-code trend these days, the idea is that you can build sophisticated applications without worrying about the coding, because machines can do much better job than humans in terms of just producing high quality code. So that was the thinking, and that's kind of the execution that took us to where we are today. As far as the history of Backendless Corporation, in 2012, we started the development. Took about 8 months to get the first public beta out. Stayed in beta for about a year. In 2014, there was this 1.0 came out. So we kind of started evolving it, and took about 2 years to break even as far as just all the operational expenses. And then we got into the profitable territory since then. We're focusing on the back end for the good portion of time. And we're quite known in the industry that is called mobile backend as a service. And there are quite a few developers out there that really consume Backendless really just as the backend. And then this year we introduced sort of a new phase of Backendless, which is the no-code UI development capability. And at this point, it is a super solid backend that is there in a way where if you are a non-coder, you can still consume it and do a lot of powerful things. And now we have this no-code facility to create UI, and then marrying the two together gives you the platform that can be used to create very powerful enterprise applications. So that's kind of just to summarize what I just said in here, that's our no-code plan. So build solid backend, make it as simple as possible to understand and configure by non-coders, and introduce the UI system, and then the marrying the two together, where all the integration is done out of the box, is the platform that is Backendless. So that's kind of the slide portion of my presentation. And now I'd like to jump right into the demo. If there are any questions about anything that I have presented so far, please fire away. I really would like to kind of have it in a more of a conversational style, if you will. But if not, then that's okay. And I'll just jump right into the demo. So what you guys see here is Backendless Console. Backendless Console is really the front end for one's backend, and also the environment where you can build UI applications and integrate it with the backend. And the reason why backend, we believe, is very important is because in enterprise applications, and the reason I point out enterprise applications is because we believe with the system that we have at this point is really poised to be the platform that can be used to create that applications with the complexity that they call for. Creating websites or marketing, kind of pages and so on is possible, though you may find other solutions to be better at that. But anyway, as far as just the competitive landscape that we fall into, I believe having the strong backend that can scale to the infinite proportions is going to be #1 differentiator. Because if your application reaches certain level of activity and certain number of users and certain traffic that constantly bombards your servers, if the backend cannot handle that traffic and it just starts failing, it doesn't matter how sophisticated your UI is. It doesn't matter how fantastically good looking user experience is. If the backend is not there to accept that request, and then the service availability is 0, the whole application means nothing. Therefore, creating a super powerful backend was the #1 priority for us, because we believe that's where really the magic power of any kind of application is. So here, let me just walk you through the capabilities that exist in the backend. And I'll be walking through from the perspective of a non-developer or maybe non-coder, because there are a lot of kind of no-code elements that we put in here. If you think about a backend, any kind of backend, it really consists of the several finite things. Well, #1, there is a user management system, right? Because something must be there to handle user registrations, logins, session management, password recovery, updates of the user profiles, security policies associating users with roles, enforcing those roles. So that's all of it is kind of in the realm of user management. Then another element is going to be the database. Any backend, most of the backends will be calling for some sort of persistent storage. So having a database that is highly scalable and provides the facilities where you can describe your data model in a way that fits most of the scenarios that exist out there is important. And I'll give you a quick demo of the database. Then another element of any kind of backend that you would want to have when you build an application is the file storage. Being able to upload files, move them around in the directories, get the file listings and so on is important, because a lot of applications deal with files. Messaging system, that includes being able to send out emails, mass emails, push notifications, or just publish subscribe messages where you can send a message and then have multiple subscribers receive that message with some sort of filtering, okay? So these are the things that pretty much any backend must have. And with Backendless, all of these things, they are available out of the box with very flexible APIs that you can use to consume the backend. So at this point, I haven't said anything about the UIs yet, right? So everything that I just mentioned would still be applicable to just any developer out there that is building a client application. So if you're building an application by hand, whether it's Android, iOS, JavaScript, or just a website, or whatever, you would be using those APIs, and we provide the SDKs for that. So for instance, if I just jump right into the database. So here's the data section. And then this is the front end for the database. So here you have the data tables, and then this is the data that exists in there, and you can page through, you can create new records, you can run kind of filtering and sorting and so on. You can create a new table. So here's if I say that this is going to be demo table, you just create a table on the fly. and then create the schema for this table. So let's say it's going to have the column called name, right? So at this point, the table is created. There is no data in there. We can create a new record. And at this point, instantly, the APIs are created for the data table. So here we have this kind of ugly looking, and we're working to make it look better, but still a front end that gives you the capability to use that data table through REST API. So here, if I click get, a REST request goes out against this URL, and you get the JSON response. And if I want to modify this object and just do an update, I can take this object ID, which is a unique ID of this object, put it right into here, this object ID, and modify this value to something like foobar. And if I do put, then the value is updated in the database. So all the REST capabilities, they're instantly created just by the virtue of creating this data table. Okay, so it's restifying your data structure on the fly. What makes this powerful is that data that exists in the database may have related data. So I can have a table called person, for instance, and I do have this person right here, okay? And then I can create another column that will be a reference to a table address. And then these tables are going to be related to each other. But anyway, creating this powerful schema that represents the data model that your application works with is extremely important, okay? And that is what we have in there. As far as the number of records that you can store in the database, it could be in millions, and then the response time will not be degraded as the size of your data set grows, okay? So here, complete REST API for the data that you create. There is a capability of visualizing your schema that is coming in the next release. So that's the data storage right there. If we take a look at the file storage, well, it's kind of fairly straightforward. You just get a bunch of directories and you have the files. You can upload a new file. You can edit the files right there in Management Console. You can assign permissions. So all of those capabilities are there. When it comes to messaging, so for instance, if you want to configure push notifications, well, in here, let me just move these little videos to the side. In here, you can just start composing a push notification, and gives you the preview of what it's going to look like. And you can define who will be getting this notification. You can just create a little query that says that anyone that is coming from United States or speaks certain language or whatever. So this could be completely up to you. And then you schedule this push notification, and it goes out, and you can start sending out millions of push notifications completely automatic. Or if you want to configure emails, you can just create an email template and start doing kind of email marketing just by composing your email right here. So those are the backend facilities. Now, as far as the backend, one of the things that we have had for a long time is an ability to create API services. And then these API services can be created without any coding. So for instance, let's just create an API service that fetches data from that person table that I had. So in here, if I create a service, we have added a system called Codeless. And this, we're kind of now entering the whole no-code domain of Backendless, okay? So let's just call it person service. And then the method's going to be get people. All right, so in here, this is the placeholder for the service. So if I go into edit, then in here, I can just start adding logic for that API service. And that logic will automatically translate to code, but you don't need to know anything about this code. So in here in this editor, we have a bunch of different blocks. And then each individual block, whether it's under users API, data API, messaging API, all of these blocks translate to a specific API call. So for instance, in this, if I want to retrieve data from the database, and I'm going to be retrieving it from the table called person, this is already an implementation of an API service. So if I deploy that API service, and at this point, that service now is live, and I go to my API services, and here's my get people, I can just invoke the service, and I get the result of what's coming from the database. So now, without writing any code, I have a complete implementation of my API service. In fact, if I get this URL and I copy it and open up in the browser and I just do this GET request, well, this is the response from the API service that returns data from my database, okay? So, and this is already quite powerful, even though it is still kind of fairly removed from the whole UI building capability because we're focusing just on the back end, but we already did something without writing any code that is there, that works, that can be configured with security permissions and so on. But anyway, so when it comes to creating logic without any code, you can create completely custom API services, and with the capability to create this logic, if you can, how I got this. So if you can think about this logic, you can definitely do it, because with this capability, you get the complete management of logic building. So here you have all the if statements and comparisons, and you have the loops, operations on the dates, on objects, lists, variables, you name it, the whole 9 yards that is needed in there to build logic. Now, that's the back end. So, and this is what we've been working on for years. And this is super stable and used by thousands of customers. So now the next chapter, and I'm kind of rewinding back to earlier this year, was to add an ability to build UIs on top of this backend, okay? And that's what this front end button is. So if we go to this front end, we're entering now the ability to create UIs with graphical components and integrate these UIs with the backend, okay? So in here, the UI building capability is fairly rich because, as you can see, there's just a bunch of different UI components, and then there's an ability to render this UI on different form factors, whether it's mobile, tablet, or the desktop, and you can modify the styling and the colors and the fonts and padding. So all those things are in there. But once again, the most powerful thing that I think it does today is just bridging that gap between the back end and the front end, okay? So let me just do a quick demo of kind of creating a UI that out of the box gives you an ability to work with your database data, okay? So I'm gonna create a new page, and I will call it database demo page. By the way, whenever you create new pages, we have these different types of templates just that already have certain functionalities. So if you wanna create the login page that just takes the user ID and password, you use this template. If you want to do password recovery, this one, and so on. I'm just gonna create a blank page and add the ability to retrieve data from the database, for instance, all right? So here's this page, and one of the components that we have is called data table, which I believe is absolutely fantastic because of the kind of things that it can do, okay? So this is our data table, and notice that for me to integrate it with the backend and just start working with a specific data table in the database, I can just point it to a table that exists in the database. So for instance, the table is going to be, let's say, world cities, okay? That's it. I pointed out world cities. It automatically got all the columns that exist in world cities. I can configure what these columns are, hide some columns that I don't need, okay? I can move them around and reposition any way I want to. And just by doing this without nothing else, I can already preview this page and get the data from the database, okay? So in here, here's my data table. It automatically has paging, okay? It automatically has searching. I don't know if Dallas is in there. Yeah, there you go. So all the cities called Dallas with their GPS coordinates, okay? And I can just start making it richer and richer. So for instance, if we have enabled searching and sorting and paging, and real time is, by the way, enabled automatically. And real time means that if multiple users work with this data, when one user modifies a record, all other users will get the updated record instantly right there on their page without any page refreshes. I can allow adding records, editing, deletion. So just with these checkboxes enabled, if I go and then rerun this page, you will see that we can start editing these records and then change all the columns that we have in there. Or I can just, delete, and then if I confirm, then that record now is deleted in the database. And once again, as you can see, no code had been written. If you need to write some code, you have the complete codeless capability to add logic as you see fit, okay? And then from the logic perspective, we have added into the system the ability to do data binding, where you can bind your values to some sort of key value pair in your page, and then all other systems will, all other components on that page will react when that value changes. Let me just show you some of the demos that I have for that demonstrate this. So for instance, if I go into just image from file demo. It's going to be right here in the back end. All right, so in this demo right here in this page, so I have this data table that retrieves data from the database, and it's going to be retrieving it from, let's take a look. I guess this is not needed here. So in this data table retrieves it from the users, okay? And if we go to the back end and take a look at the users table, so here it is, these are the users, then for every single user, there is a column called photo, okay? So these are the records of the registered users of my application, okay? Now in the front end, what I do is I retrieve all the users, and then what I want to do is when I click on a row in that data table, I want to display the photo of that user. So how is it implemented? Select the data table and go to the logic in here, and notice that there is an event called onRecordSelected right here. And then the logic is that we take the selected record, the one that we clicked on, and then we get the property called photo. And that photo is going to be the column in the database, okay? But there is a value of that photo, which is the URL. So we get this property photo, and we put it as the property in page data. And page data is sort of like a bag of properties that is sitting in the page that may have multiple data values, okay? So we take the one that is selected and put it into this user photo for page data. Now let's see what happens with the actual image. So select the image and go to the logic. And notice that in the source URL logic, we're binding it to user photo, okay? So when the record is selected, we put it into user photo in the page, and then in here, we use the data binding for the same key, for the same user photo, okay? Now the effect is gonna look like this. Let me run this page. So here we have these users. So when I click on a user, what happens is that the user photo URL goes into this page data, and then the image automatically reacts through data binding and just retrieves that image and renders it on the screen, okay? So here, literally, as far as the actual logic that we had to add to make this happen, it is absolutely minimal, and it boils down to just this, okay? Everything else happens automatically. Of course, there is a block, there is a component of the data table that has a bunch of logic of itself, but from the developer perspective, for the no-code developer, all it takes is just dragging this component and providing this codeless logic, okay? Let me show you some other things that it can do. There is a built-in integration with maps, which is super rich. So, and then the demo that I wanted to show you is called Map My Location. So there is a map component, okay? And in this map component, if we go to the logic, okay? In fact, I think we need to go to the logic of the page itself first. All right, so this is on page enter, okay? And then on page enter is the event that is triggered whenever you just open up this page. And in here, there's a block get current geolocation, okay? And then this get current geolocation is a built-in block that we have in here in this collection. So we get the current location and we put it into the key called my location in page data. Okay, so this just determines the location of where the visitor of this page is. Now, once we have the location, then we go into the map itself. And inside of the map, in the markers logic right here, we just put a marker for the location that we got from the browser. This way, the marker will automatically be there. And also, we do the same thing for the map center logic, just to center that map. Okay, so just get the location and then center the map by adding this logic. And the way it's going to work is like this. So just run the page, and then boom, automatically it determined that I am in Kyiv, Ukraine, which is where I am right now. That's where our development team is. Okay, so here this is pretty cool. I'm still kind of impressed how easy it is, and the level of effort to make this happen is absolutely small once you understand how data binding works, which is fairly common approach in a lot of UI applications. So if you're familiar with like React approach or Angular or many other UI frameworks, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not, that is okay. I think the concept is very easy to master. Another example that I wanted to demonstrate, it's called Search and PAM, and it's still with map. And I like this kind of demos because they're very visual, yet they demonstrate how simple it is to implement these things. So in here, what we have going on is we get a collection of cities. So this is the data table and it's mapped to city, okay? And in here, do we have any logic for, no, we don't have any logic for the actual, as far as the map, so there is a logic on the map. So in map, now we can start doing a little bit more interesting stuff. So what happens in here is this is the on-pan event. So whenever we start moving this map around, this event is triggered. And then whenever it is triggered, what we do is we compose a query. And then this green block right here, it's essentially just a query that says, it identifies the coordinates of the corners of the map, creates this text query, and then puts it into this where clause variable. And then notice that we use this load table objects from the city table, and we pass this query in here. So what happens is whenever you move the map around, we create this query, send the request to the database, get the collection of data back, and render it on the map. Okay, so all of this is happening in this codeless logic. Let's take a look of how this will work once we run the page. All right, so we move the map, and there you go. We got all these markers. The markers are individual cities that are in this viewport. All these cities are rendered right here in the table. So for instance, if we just start, let's say zooming in on Texas. Okay, so here's the Texas. And as you can see in here, we got all these Texas cities, the ones that are rendered right here on the map. Okay, and I think it is pretty cool because once again, it actually does something useful. And the amount of code that is needed to implement this, well, not so code, but logic is absolutely minimal, okay? Now, as far as the time, I think I'm kind of running out of time for the demo, but I hope it gives you an idea of the capabilities. Something that I want to point out in case if you're interested to learn more about it, okay? There are several ways, depending on the angle that or the interest that you might have in backend. So if you are interested to learn about the backend capabilities, well, first of all, you can create an account. There is a free 30-day trial of one of the plans. During this trial, you're given an opportunity to participate in what we call missions, okay? And let me just switch to a different app. So, and then in missions, it's sort of like a quest, okay? And then in these missions, you basically presented with a bunch of different tasks, okay? And in here, for these tasks, you basically get the instructions. I'm not sure why I'm not getting, maybe it's because Zoom is running. Let me just try a different. There you go. So these are individual tasks that you can execute. And these tasks, the goal of them is to educate you how various things work in Backendless, okay? Whenever you start working through these tasks, and many of them are very simple and basic, like create your first data table. Whenever you run through these tasks, you get a couple of things. Number one, you get your, what we call Backendless bucks, which is kind of our own currency, and you get experience points, okay? And experience points, they essentially determine what level of experience you have with Backendless. Once you accumulate certain number of Backendless bucks, or you get to this particular milestone, then a free plan is unlocked and it's completely free. And you can just start building applications with it. Doesn't cost you a thing, okay? If you don't want to mess with these missions, you can buy what we call a shortcut to get to this free plan. So it's a one-time payment and you get the free for life plan, okay? But most of these tasks, and as you can see, you know, these are individual missions and there are multiple tasks, and then each of them has its own instructions, and it tells you exactly how it works. For many of them, there is a video that demonstrates how to get this task completed. So this will basically give you a pretty good level of experience of how individual things on the back end work. If you don't care about the back end, although I encourage you to look into the back end because it is important, but if you really want to focus just on the UI, then we have 2 courses that are published into our YouTube channel and also on Udemy, okay? And these courses combined, I think it's close to like maybe 5-6 hours of material. So there is a lot in there. But if you go to youtube.com/backendless, okay? And in here, you go into playlists. So you will see that there is a UI Builder introductory course, okay? And you will see the bunch of different lectures for this one. And there is also UI Builder Masterclass.
Hi guys, my name is Mark.
Well, that's me. And then here there is like 29 different videos, okay? Where we go through many different things. UI components and how layouts are built and all the codeless logic and how work with objects, how work with the database, how to work with the user management system. So, and it's basically 100% focusing on UI Builder capability. So and I would recommend just going through missions, become familiar with the backend, and then go through the UI Builder training courses on either Udemy or YouTube. So that's the best way to kind of learn and get started how to build applications with backends. All right, so let's switch to questions.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. That was awesome. Would you mind maybe actually, yeah, if you could unshare your screen, then maybe I can just so I can see who's got some questions. But yeah, people just fire away. There's feel free to just ask Mark any questions you have.
Hi, Mark. That is one of the most impressive tools I've seen to date, and I am quite excited by it. I really appreciate what you've done there with the mission thing. You know, the sort of gamifying the onboarding. That's a genius stroke there, and I'll be definitely digging into that. And I love using YouTube for learning stuff. So yeah, I think you've hit a sweet spot there for people like us who who are interested in building stuff, but don't necessarily have all the code abilities. A couple of questions, if you wouldn't mind. What about offline stuff for published apps that you've built? Is there a capability to have them still work offline and then sync any input when it's reconnected?
So the offline story has kind of 2 parts. If you use our SDKs, meaning that if you are actually a coder that knows how to work with Android or iOS or JS, the offline capability is part of the SDK, but it requires you to understand how to operate with the APIs and the code. The offline support for the applications built with UI Builder is coming. It is not there yet. So we do have the capability built into our SDKs and the system. We just not integrated it into the UI Builder, into the applications created with UI Builder. It is definitely on our roadmap, and it's going to be coming out fairly soon.
Excellent. And I know you touched on the sort of scalability of of the app and its potential. Is it feasible to have multiple users with permissions for those users for limited access to the data for the main user, if you know what I mean?
You're talking about kind of multi-tenant setup in the.
Yes.
Definitely. So the whole concept of multi-role, multi-user access is in there. I didn't really show it to you because I was just trying to compress it, but you can define multiple roles and it's all visual. And you can assign permissions what each individual role can or cannot do when it comes to specific operations performed on the files, on the database tables, on messaging streams, and so on. And then you can assign those roles to users, and then anything that is denied in the role, and the user who is logged in and has this role would be denied to that user. So what we have seen people doing is defining roles that identify a tenant, okay? And then assigning that role to a user that works for company X, company Y, and company Z. But then within, for that specific user, you may have some additional roles that would be applicable to what that company is allowed to do with the data sets that they have in their possession. The system works in a way where you can configure without writing any additional code, where if the user is the owner of certain data records. So for instance, if you have a customer who is creating orders, then without writing any additional code, you can configure the system where whenever you retrieve orders from the orders data table, it will return strictly the orders that that user has created. Okay, and that is completely outside of just the role system, because we have the concept of what we call owner ID, where we know who created what, and based on that, we can retrieve data that belongs to that particular user. But going back to your question, whether a multi-tenant setup is possible, yes, it is, and we have multiple users, multiple customers using Backendless from that perspective.
Perfect. So if I built something, I could have it could be used by an unlimited amount of people, and those people can then under their own subscription can then have additional people access correct. Their own data, and it's all
that is correct.
Yeah, perfect. And is there a feature to bulk upload data?
Yes, so there is to bring data into Backendless, there are several capabilities. One, you can upload data through CSVs, okay, or JSON files, and that will automatically provision the data, create the columns, put everything in there, establish the relations, whole 9 yards. You can do it with the APIs, where you basically say, these are the objects that I want to save in the database, and with a single request, it will save everything in the database.
And a user could do that themselves rather than, yeah, perfect. All right, I do have probably about 100 more questions, but I'm going to leave it there. I really appreciate what you've done there, and I'm going to get onto it straight away. Thank you very much for your time today.
Cheers, Mark. I'm excited to see what you create in there. Cool. Anyone else got any questions for Mark?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. Yeah, like Mark said, Mark, that's really impressive. I can see that's a really powerful tool. It's kind of all these no-code tools that we're using all in one place. So there's, the database and the automations and things like that. So yeah, I'm interested to know who this is for. I guess that's changed over the years, who this is for, and it's going to change again. But what do you see people using this for? Do you see people building entire systems, or maybe just using the database and APIs, or maybe the web interface? What kind of people do you think will use this, and who's your market?
This is an excellent question, and it's been a subject of multiple discussions, specifically from the marketing perspective, because answering the question of who this is for, sort of an answer of who we are, right? And my take on this has always been, and it's sort of changing because we're not huge. We still need to figure out how to move forward in the most productive manner. But I wanted to keep Backendless to be a general purpose platform where if you have an idea, whether you know how to code or you don't know how to code, I want to provide the shortest possible way to translate that idea into a live application that you can demonstrate either to the end users or at least to investors just to get some funding. So from that perspective, at this point, possible users or real users that we have, number one, they're of course coders that feel comfortable with at least creating the client side of applications. And that includes Android developers, iOS developers, JavaScript or .NET developers, Unity developers. We do have a .NET SDK. And then for anyone who knows C#, they just go into Unity and create apps. In fact, one of the largest customers that we have, it's Game, and it's in the top 40 US Play market with a dedicated instance of Backendless. They're generating close to like 20,000 requests per minute continuously. It's multi-million users set up. They have huge traffic. They're building their application with C# and Backendless is the backend. Now, as big or with the potential that are recognized for no code, the market, I believe, is way greater than the market with developers. And the market with developers is huge. We're talking about millions of developers worldwide building applications. But the beauty of no code that I see is it really a fantastic opportunity to democratize the whole concept of application development, right? Where you don't really need to have that skill. You, at least at the very minimum, you need to be able to think logically, which, you know, may be arguable. It's kind of a scarce skill, but still, right? So if you can think logically about a problem and you can translate that logic to individual instructions for the no-code software that you use, I believe it becomes a huge market. So with the no-code capabilities that we provide, both on the back end, on the client side, the target audience becomes entrepreneurs, people who have ideas, they just want to materialize them as quickly as possible. Line of business managers, because if you just want to create a report that demonstrates, and by the way, I should have shown the capability of charting to you, which is phenomenal, just being able to create charts with aggregated data and incorporate them into the UI. It is right there. I kind of missed that, but anyway, so line of business managers that just want to create reports and just, you know, query the data and easily display that. I believe even developers, it's the surprising thing that we noticed is when we introduced codeless on the back end, okay? The idea was that it's going to be for anyone who doesn't know how to code. But we see people who used to post questions about Java and iOS and then Objective-C and Swift and so on. They start asking questions like, you know, about codeless, like, yeah, this is what I'm doing, like, what am I missing? You know, why is it not working? Or, you know, what block do I need to use? And to me, it was an eye-opening experience because there is something magical about it where you don't apply any kind of programming language. You apply visual elements describing your logic. And I think what it boils down to is this instant gratification, okay? You compose this logic, you instantly can see whether it's working or not and get the result that you want without any compilers, without any, you know, syntax checking and whatnot. And then from that perspective, I think it's just the students that, you know, go through computer science and whatnot, or, you know, just need to create some sort of web page and just see the results, they become a great candidate because for them, it's very easy. People who just on day-to-day jobs, they just need to visualize the results of their work or do some sort of automation, they become potential users. With the things that we're doing, with kind of the vision for Backendless, and it's more of a version 7.0, which is the next major version, we're adding a lot of capabilities from the automation perspective. And I'm talking about business process automation. And business process automation may sound pretty boring, especially once you get into this BPM, BPEL, all this kind of, you know, pretty boring stuff. But I think we managed to make the database concept fun. It's kind of cool, you know, to be able to define your schema and instantly get the results. We made the whole concept of, you know, publish, subscribe messaging and creating API services visually not boring. And I think we can make the whole concept of business process automation fun. And that's what I'm really excited. And that really adds a whole new group of potential users where it could be just business analysts creating and automating their business processes on top of our platform.
Yeah, great answer. I mean, I thought it's pretty much for everybody in there, isn't it?
Right, exactly.
No, it's really powerful. And like Mark said as well, I like the gamification of the onboarding. That's something I've not seen before. So yeah, I'm looking forward to testing it out. So yeah, good job, Mark. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, good question again. Yeah, you're stealing all my questions. But no, it's good that they're being covered. Michael, have you got any questions for Mark? If you're there. Okay, you may be just on mute. That's okay. I've got a few questions if that's all right.
Sure.
I think you've already touched on a couple of these things, but just the roadmap. What do like no coders have to look forward to on your product roadmap? Would be really interesting.
So the things that will show up relatively soon is the whole concept of creating themes for your applications. Okay, because right now the process of customizing the look and feel is something that we want to be better. Where if you just want to quickly change the look and feel of buttons or drop down lists or fonts or headers or whatever, there needs to be one place where you go and you just apply it. And then that's also coming. So ability to style your applications from the centralized perspective. That's what we're working on. We're adding an ability of themes where you can just pick a theme and then the entire application just all of a sudden just looks different. Most importantly, and I'm not even talking about 7.0, it's going to be much sooner. What we want to do, and we're already started working on it, is to create a place, a community, with a community feel type of place where you can basically create applications and put them into this repository and make them available for everyone, sort of creating a blueprint, okay? And there could be a very interesting take on this, where if you create an application that would require a payment plan in Backendless, because you know it requires more resources, then whenever someone creates an app on top of your blueprint and we start making money, we basically can pay commission to the person who created the original blueprint. Okay, so this way there's going to be an e-commerce element where people can find new revenue streams. And that's not only for blueprints. You could create, you know, a reusable component and put it into this directory where others can just start reusing the components that you created. Same thing for API services or page templates. So that's going to be, I think, pretty cool. Just engaging the community to make the product better and give them an ability to monetize their time and effort. Of course, in the longer term perspective, from the no code perspective, it's the ability to automate processes where, you know, someone visits the page and submits a form and then automatically a report is generated and sent out by email, things like this. So being able to configure it without any coding, I think would be a major accomplishment for us. It has been done before in a way that I don't particularly like, because it requires a lot of tinkering. Before you can even experience the software, you have to spend about 3 days talking to salespeople that are trying to figure out why you want to do this. It needs to be better than this. I think we're in 2020, well, not the best year, but still, you know, at this time and age, is going to be a simpler way to get to the point where you can automate a business process.
Yeah, I agree completely. That sounds really exciting. Yeah, I mean, it's clear you've already got an awesome product already, but it's good to like see the next steps. I've got 2 more questions. before wrap up, if that's okay, to
Sure.
just run over slightly. But one, it's just I'm asking on behalf of a friend who he's been looking around every no-code platform to see if it's possible. So don't worry if it's not, because he hasn't found one yet that does.
Sure.
But he's looking to create essentially a skill tree. So essentially what you've done with your gamification of your onboarding process. And he's looking to, yeah, to create that. Now, would you be able to create something similar in Backendless? No, yeah, don't worry if you can't, but that, yeah.
Definitely possible from the back end perspective.
Okay. Okay.
Because when it comes to our missions, and which is kind of cool the way it is implemented, is the entire tree of the missions and all the tasks and how many points you get and where each individual developer is in that process is stored in the Backendless itself. So Backendless kind of uses Backendless for data storage, for retrieval, for all of these. So everything that you see in the mission is actually stored in one Backendless application. There is not any special. It's just like any app that you would create. There is a data structure. There is a database where we store everything. From the UI rendering perspective, if you were to do something like that in UI Builder, it would be pretty hard because there's a lot of lower level styling and calculations from the positioning and rendering and all of that.
Sure.
You would be able to get something similar done, but being able to have this high degree of control of where things are and with all the logic for scrolling, you would not be able to get that to that level of complexity done in UI Builder yet.
Sure. Sure. No, it's good to know. Yeah, it sounds like you can get 75% there, maybe,
yeah,
or 60% or whatever. But no, yeah, I appreciate that. And just lastly, on the I guess inspiration behind the front end, because it looks very similar to I don't know if you've heard of like a no-code tool called Funkable, but like essentially like Lego, just like attaching different blocks together. Just be interested in the inspiration behind that and what the research and the inputs that went into that, designing that.
So as far as the logic editor, the whole codeless thing, the project, there is a project by sort of adopted by Google called Blockly. Okay, and Blockly came out of MIT, I believe. That was put into open source, and some people adapted it. I think Lego Mindstorms uses it for composing logics for their robots. So we used that, and I think we were one of the first ones to use it for backend programming, where the concept of a single block representing an API that goes into the backend, that was a novelty that we introduced. So we have invested quite a bit into integrating Blockly into Backendless from the backend perspective, where once we started working on the UI, it just made perfect sense to reuse the same system for programming logic in the UI.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's good to know. Yeah, really interested. Cool. Well, that is it from me, question-wise. So apologies, we've sort of spilled over time-wise. But thanks so much for your time and everything you've given us today. Is there anything you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, I just wanted to thank everyone for sticking around and watching the demo, and I hope you found it useful and interesting. Where if you want to give it a try, that's going to be the biggest form of gratitude that I could experience from you guys, of just giving us a chance at least to experience it and see if you like it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. We're definitely sending feedback your way and all that stuff as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks so much, and see you guys next week. But yeah, cheers, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you. All the best. Cheers, Max. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.